She remembers the first night she truly felt alone. It was not loud or dramatic there. There was no shouting or tears. It was quiet and cold and full of thoughts she could not escape. She was still young but old enough to understand that something was wrong. How she stayed in did not feel like home. It felt like a place where she was allowed to exist but not welcomed. She had been left there years earlier. No one ever sat her down to explain why. People said it was temporary. They said someone would come back for her. Days turned into months and months turned into years. No one came. She stopped asking questions because every answer felt the same. Just waiting became her way of life. She waited for kindness. She waited for approval. She waited for someone to look at her and see more than an extra mouth to feed. Most days she felt invisible. Other days she felt like a problem no one wanted to solve. She learned early how to stay quiet, how to move through rooms without being noticed, how to finish chores without being told twice. Praise was rare. Mistakes were remembered. Love was never spoken. School became her only escape, not because it was easy, but because it gave her a reason to be somewhere else. She liked sitting near windows. She liked watching the world outside move freely. People laughed, walked, talked, lived. She wondered what it felt like to belong to someone. At night she would lie awake and imagine a different life, one where someone tucked her in, one where someone asked about her day, one where she was not constantly afraid of being sent away again. Those thoughts felt dangerous. Hope had hurt her before. As she grew older, the distance between her and others grew too. She did not know how to trust. Every kind gesture felt temporary. Every smile felt borrowed. She expected endings even before beginnings. She was finally old enough. She left. There was no goodbye party, no hugs, no one tried to stop her. She walked away with a small bag and a heavy heart. She told herself it was freedom, but deep down, it felt like proof that she had never truly been wanted. Life outside was harder than she imagined. Jobs came and went. Rooms were rented, then lost. She met people, but never stayed long enough to matter. Every time she started to feel close, she pulled back. Leaving first felt safer than being left. She worked hard. She never complained. She believed that if she stayed useful, she would stay allowed. But usefulness does not fill an empty heart. It only hides the pain for a while. Some nights she sat alone and wondered if something was wrong with her, why people never stayed, why she always felt replaceable. Those thoughts followed her everywhere. Like a shadow she could not outrun, she avoided mirrors, not because she disliked her face, but because she did not recognize the person looking back. Someone strong, yet tired. Someone capable, yet broken. She told herself love was not real, that it was a story people told to feel better. She believed independence was safer. Depending on no one meant no one could disappoint her. Still, there were moments, small, quiet moments. She wished someone would notice, someone would choose her without conditions. Someone would stay even when things got hard. The memory of being left never faded. It shaped how she walked, how she spoke, how she dreamed. It was the first lesson life taught her, that people leave by the time she reached the edge of the small town. She felt empty, not angry, not sad, just tired of carrying a past that refused to let her go. She sat there watching the road stretch into the distance, not knowing where it led, knowing who she would meet. All she knew was that she believed her story had already been written, a story of being abandoned again and again. She did not know yet that this was only the beginning, that one path was about to cross another, that the life she thought was over was quietly waiting to change. For now she only felt the weight of the past, the fear of the future, standing alone, believing she had always been on her own and always would be. Morning came slowly for her, not with hope, but with habit. She woke before the sun, because sleeping too long made her anxious. Stillness reminded her of waiting, and she hated that feeling. She gathered her things quietly. There were never many things to gather: a few clothes, a worn notebook, and memories she could not leave behind. She moved through places like a guest who stayed too long, always careful not to take up space. Work became her routine, not because she loved it, but because it kept her moving, cleaning, lifting, serving, sorting, the type of work people noticed only when it was not done. She learned to be efficient and invisible at the same time. People came and went around her. Some were kind for a moment, some barely looked at her. She did not expect more. Expectations led to disappointment, and she had learned that lesson well. When jobs ended, she did not ask why. She thanked them and left it. It was easier than wondering what she did wrong. It was easier than hoping they might ask her to stay. There were nights she slept in rooms with strangers, rooms that smelled like old air and borrowed time. Mother nights she slept wherever she could. She told herself it was temporary, but deep inside she felt the pattern repeating. Every move felt like another quiet goodbye. Even when no words were spoken, she became good at leaving before anyone noticed she was gone. She watched families from a distance, sat bus stops and shops and parks. She noticed the small things: shared food, familiar jokes, gentle arguments, things that meant nothing to others but everything to her. Sometimes she imagined stepping into those lives, sitting at a table that already had a place for her, but the thought felt unreal, like imagining another world. Trust was something she kept locked away. She smiled when needed. She spoke when spoken to, but she never shared her story. Words once released could not be taken back. She feared being judged more than being alone. There were moments when kindness confused Hera, a stranger offering help, a coworker asking if she was all right. She often said yes, even when she was not. Admitting weakness felt dangerous. She believed strength meant silence. If she carried her pain quietly, it could not be used against her. One evening things fell apart quickly. The job she relied on ended without warning. The room she stayed in was no longer available. City felt louder that night, like it was reminding her she had no place in it. She walked for hours past lights and closed doors. Her feet hurt, but she did not stop. Stopping meant thinking, meant feeling. By D. Dand. Thinking meant feeling. The time she reached the edge of the town, she was exhausted, not just physically, but inside. She sat down and stared at the road ahead, stretched far and empty, just like her future felt. Wondered if this was all life would ever be: moving, surviving, leaving. She asked herself if anyone would notice if she disappeared. Answer scared. Her memories came back uninvited. The house she was left in, the promises that were never kept, the feeling of being an afterthought. It all felt close, again, like no time had passed at all. She wrapped her arms around herself, not for warmth, but for comfort. She had learned to be her own shelter. She thought about turning back, but there was nothing to return to, only familiar pain. As night settled, the countryside grew quiet, different from the city, not empty, but calm. The silence did not feel threatening. It felt honest. She noticed the land around her: open fields, distant fences, the sound of wind. Something about it slowed her breathing. For the first time in days, her mind felt less crowded. She did not know where she was going. She did not have a plan. All she knew was that she could not keep living the same way. Something had to change. She told herself not to hope. Hope had failed her before, but a small thought refused to leave. What if the road ahead was different? She stood and adjusted her bag. Her body felt heavy, but her steps moved forward. Each step was uncertain, but it was still a step. She did not know yet that this road would lead her to someone unexpected, someone who would not rush her, someone who would not promise and disappear. For now she only knew this: she had reached the edge of what she could endure, and sometimes that is where change begins. She walked along the dusty road as the sky turned soft shades of evening. The air smelled of grass and earth and something she could not name. It was quiet, but not empty. Every sound seemed sharper than in the city. Her feet hurt, but she did not stop. She had learned long ago that stopping meant facing her thoughts too closely, and her thoughts were crowded with old fears and unanswered questions. A barn came into view, simple and weathered. She was not sure why she felt drawn to it. Something about it felt safe in a way few places had. A man appeared, tall and steady. He wore a hat and clothes that spoke of a life spent outside. High did not ask her who she was at first. He only nodded and kept doing what he was doing. She watched him for a long time, not because she wanted to be seen, but because she wanted to understand someone who was not hurried or loud. When he finally spoke, his voice was calm, demanding, not suspicious. He asked if she needed water. She said yes. He gave her a cup and did not rush her, did not push questions. It felt strange to be treated with patience instead of judgment. She sipped slowly. The water tasted simple and clean, and somehow good. She had not realized how thirsty she was. He offered her a place to rest for the night. She hesitated. Offers had always come with conditions or disappeared. But something about him made her pause before saying no. She agreed, not because she trusted him fully, but because she was tired, and the idea of staying still seemed better than moving again. The barn was warm in a quiet way, not crowded with possessions, not busy with voices, just space. Heat showed her where she could lie down, did not watch, her did not comment. The silence was not empty, it was steady. She felt herself relax a little, something she had not felt in a long time. Safety, not the false kind people said was safe, but quiet, steady, safe. They ate a simple meal. He did not force conversation. He asked small questions, nothing too personal. She answered carefully. Something about him made her speak without thinking as much. She had thought talking would always feel dangerous, but his presence did not make her afraid. When night came, they went outside. The stars were bright and countless. She had rarely seen them so clearly. He pointed to some, told her which ones moved and which stayed. She listened and realized she liked learning without fear. She liked simple guidance. For the first time, she felt curiosity without worry. She asked about the land and the animals and the way he worked. He answered with patience. She realized she liked this more than she expected. She started helping around the barn, small tasks at first, feeding animals, gathering firewood, cleaning spaces. He explained what to do without rushing or criticizing. She worked hard, not to prove herself, not to earn love, but because she wanted to belong somewhere for once, even if only in small ways. Days passed. She found herself laughing quietly, smiling to herself, something she had thought was gone. He did not ask her about her past, did not push her to explain why she had come. He only offered steady work and steady presence. It felt strange, like the first time she had breathed without holding in fear. She began to notice small kindnesses. His hand offered when she slipped, a nod of encouragement, a simple smile in the morning. She did not know if it was trust yet, but it was the first step toward it. At night she lay awake, thinking not about old pain, not about being left, but about possibilities. She wondered if she could start over, if she could try to believe that some people might stay, that some people might care without leaving. The barn became a small world, a world where she could focus on work and learning, a world where someone treated her as she was, not as a problem, not as invisible, just as a person. Sometimes she watched him work silently, his calm way of moving through tasks, his careful attention. It gave her a strange hope that life could be differentiated. Did not yet know if she could accept it fully, but the seed was planted. For the first time in a long time, she felt that maybe being seen did not have to hurt. Maybe she could belong without being abandoned again. She did not speak these thoughts aloud. She was not ready, but each day in the barn made her feel lighter. Each small task, each quiet moment was like a step toward something she had thought impossible. She realized slowly that not everyone was hurried or careless. Some people were steady and patient and real. It scared her because hope had hurt before, but it also felt like a gift she could not ignore. She did not know the future, did not know if she would stay, did not know if she could trust fully, but she knew this: she had reached a place that felt different. Tanned for the first time in years, she felt she could breathe, not just exist. Not all roads are fast, some are slow and quiet, but sometimes slow and quiet is exactly what the heart needs. She woke early the next day with the first light creeping over the horizon. The barn smelled of hay and wood, and the air was fresh. She felt a strange sense of peace, something she had not felt in a long time. The cowboy was already working outside. He moved slowly and steadily, tending to the animals and checking fences. She watched for a moment before joining him. He showed her what to do, how to feed the animals, carefully how to fix the fences so they would hold. He spoke without her every word, simple and clear. She followed his instructions and tried not to make mistakes. But when she did, he corrected her gently, not with anger or judgment, only with calm guidance. Day by day, she learned more, not just about work, but about patience, about persistence, about doing things without rushing or fear. Sometimes she struggled, felt like giving up, but the cowboy never let her feel pressured. He allowed her space to fail, and try again one. Afternoon, she sat by the fence watching the sun hit the fields. She realized she had been holding herself back for so.
Afraid to reach out, afraid to trust, afraid to believe in.
Anything good. He noticed her sitting quietly, did not ask her thoughts, did not push conversation. He only sat beside her. They watched the world without speaking, and in that silence she began to feel something new, a sense that someone could be steady, and truth that not all people would leave when things were hard. She started to open small parts of herself, sharing small stories, asking simple questions. She found that he listened, not just waiting to speak, but actually listening. She realized that trust could be built slowly, not all at once, not as a test, but as a gentle unfolding. The work on the farm became more than survival. It became a way to rebuild. Every fence mended, every animal cared for was a step toward something she had never thought possible. Life where she could belong. She began to see patterns in his kindness, and not random or fleeting, not given and taken away, but constant and real. It made her cautious hope take root. Some days were harder than others. Memories would come back, uninvited old fears whispered that she would be left again, but each time she looked at him she felt reassurance, not spoken, but understood. She realized that belonging was not about perfection, not about earning approval, was about presence and consistency, about showing up and being seen without judgment. She began to notice herself changing, her steps lighter, her heart less guarded, her smile more frequent. The cowboy offered small responsibilities, not as favors, but as trust. She began to feel capable, valued, useful, in a way that was different from before. She had thought she only survived. Now she realized she could thrive. Nights became times of reflection. She sat alone by the fire, sometimes thinking about how far she had come, how she no longer feared silence or being herself. She began to plan little things, not big leaps, not promises of forever, but small actions that made her feel like part of something. She noticed how he treated the land with patience and care, how he spoke to animals with respect, how he worked without anger. It taught her something important. Gentleness and strength could exist together, that patience was not weakness. Each day brought a new lesson, not just about survival, but about life and connection. She started to trust her own feelings, started to listen to her own voice, to understand that her past did not have to define her future. The cowboy never rushed her, never demanded loyalty. Ainley offered steadiness and opportunity, and she began to see that some people truly could be different. By the end of the week, she felt a subtle change. Her steps carried less weight. Her eyes sought light more than shadows. Her heart learned to breathe slowly. Still had fears. She still remembered abandonment. But now she could imagine a life where she was not alone, where someone would stay, even when it was hard, where she could trust and be trusted. The barn had become a small sanctuary, a place where she could grow, a place where patience and kindness were stronger than fear. She realized slowly that this was what hope felt like, not loud or dramatic, not promised in words, but steady and lived every day. She began to look at the future differently, not as a threat, but as something possible, something she could walk towards step by step. For the first time, she felt that life might not be about waiting for someone to stay, but about noticing the ones who already do. Days turned into weeks, and she began to notice herself changing in ways she had not expected. She walked taller, and her hands moved with confidence. Fear that had followed her for so long began to fade. Slowly she learned the rhythm of the farm, the way the animals responded to care, the way the land needed attention. The cowboy showed her everything patiently, without rush or judgments. She began to feel proud of what she could do, not for praise, but for herself. She discovered strength she had not known she possessed, the kind of strength that came from persistence. And Carrie never forced words or affection. He let her find her own place in the barn and on the land. This freedom was new to her. She had never known someone could care without taking or leaving. They spent hours together in quiet works, sometimes side by side, sometimes each lost in thought. The silence was comfortable. It was different from the silence of loneliness. She began to look forward to mornings, to walking out to the fields, to feeling useful and present. Small tasks became a connection to the world and to herself. She noticed that she could smile without fear. She laughed softly at mistakes. She no longer expected disappointment at every turn. Some evenings, they sat watching the sky. She noticed how he respected the small details. Way he noticed the wind, the clouds, the way the animals moved, taught her to notice, to appreciate things without wanting them to change immediately. She began to feel safe in a way she had not thought possible, safety that was steady and reliable, not dependent on promises. Fleeting but constant, she started to open parts of herself she had kept hidden for years, small stories from her past thoughts. She had been afraid to speak. The cowboy listened without judging or interrupting. He only acknowledged her presence and her courage in sharing. She realized she could trust again. That trust did not mean losing herself, it meant letting someone be near. While keeping her own space, sometimes memories still surfaced. The fear of being left never completely disappeared, but now it was quieter, held in check by the steady life around Irby, the cowboy who had not left by the routines and responsibilities that gave her purpose. She began to hope, not the reckless hope that had hurt her before, but a quiet hope built on experience and presence. The hope that life could be different, the hope that she could belong. Her nights became restful, sleep came without dread. Dreams were lighter, not full of loss, but of possibilities. She started planning small things for herself, things she had never thought to dodo. Care for the animals in her own way, to organize the barn more efficiently, to make the place her own without fear. The cowboy noticed her growth, not in words that demanded recognition, but in his gentle encouragement. Hey, nod here, a comment there, showing that he saw her effort. He never pressured her to be more than she was ready to be. She realized that healing did not mean forgetting the past, it meant learning to live alongside it without letting it control her. Weeks turned into months. She began to feel that she had roots, that she had a place where she belonged, that her presence mattered without conditions. One evening, she stood at the edge of the field, watching the sun dip below the horizon, the sky painted in shades of warmth and light. She felt a sense of completeness, a feeling she had not known since childhood. She remembered all the times she had felt abandoned, all the times she had thought love was impossible, all the nights she had cried silently, and she realized that her life had changed, not because she had forgotten the pain, but because she had found something stronger than fear. She had found steadiness, kindness, purpose, and the ability to trust again. She looked at the cowboy not for validation, not for promises, but with quiet gratitude for showing her that life could be different, that a person could stay, that hope was real. She felt ready to move forward, to embrace life on the new path she had found, to care for herself and for others around her, live without constantly expecting to be left. The barn, the land, and the cowboy had become her new home, a place where she could heal, where she could grow, where she could finally believe in belonging. Her past was still a part of her, but it no longer defined her future. She had a story that was being rewritten step by step, day by day. And she knew that she could face the world not alone, but with the strength she had found, with the quiet knowledge that she could trust, that she was seen, that she mattered. Life had given her a new path, one it's built on steady care and human connection, and for the first time she felt ready to walk it fully, not fearing the journey but embracing it with hope and courage. She woke before dawn. The fields were quiet and the air smelled of earth and dew. She walked slowly to the barn, thinking about the days that had passed. The work had become familiar, a burden, but a rhythm she could rely on. She fed the animals carefully, checking each one, making sure no detail was missed. Cowboy was already outside tending to the fences. He nodded to her but did not speak. Much words were not needed, yet she began to notice small changes in her self-patience. Came easier. Fear was not constant. She could focus on what she could do today instead of what might be lost tomorrow. They worked side by side, sometimes quietly, sometimes speaking about simple things, the weather, the animals, the land. She found herself listening as much as talking, enjoying the slow rhythm of shared labor. Some afternoons she wandered beyond the barn. The fields stretched far and wild. She watched birds and insects and trees swaying in the wind. She realized she could enjoy being alone without feeling lonely. At night they sat near the fire. She reflected on how much she had changed, how the past still lingered but did not control her, how hope was no longer dangerous. The cowboy sometimes shared small lessons, not just about the land, but about life, about steady effort, about patience, about noticing the small things. She learned to appreciate these moments without rushing forward. She tried new tasks, repairing tools, organizing spaces. HSS gave her confidence. She saw that she could trust herself and the world. Slowly she started to plan small goals, not grand dreams, not unreachable ideas, simple actions that made each day feel meaningful. She noticed the animals responding differently to her care, trusted her presence and movement. It gave her a sense of accomplishment and connections. She thought of her past life, the loneliness, the fear, the abandonment, but she no longer felt trapped by it. She could think without pain dominating her thoughts. She began to share more of herself's small stories of childhood thoughts and feelings she had hidden for years. The cowboy listened without interrupting or judging it, taught her that sharing could be safe. Weeks turned into months. She felt more grounded and capable. The land became part of her life. She felt a quiet joy in the work and care she offered. She noticed how the cowboy remained consistent, never pushing, never demanding. His steady presence became a guide for her own steadiness. One day she helped fix a broken fence. She saw her own reflection in the work. Strong, careful, patient, capable. She felt proud, not for praise, but for herself. She began to notice her own growth in small ways. Her steps lighter, her hands more confident, her heart calmer. She felt able to handle challenges without fear. She continued to explore beyond the farm, learning about plants and animals, observing nature with courage. Discovery reminded her that the world could be safe and interesting. She started imagining longer-term goals, how she could improve the land, how she could care better for the animals, how she could live a life built on consistency and connection. Her nights became times for reflection and planning. She slept deeply, no longer haunted by fear or loneliness. Her dreams were quiet and hopeful. She realized she had built a life that was not dependent on anyone leaving or staying. It was based on her own effort and choices. The cowboy remained a steady presence, not a crutch, not a protector, but a companion who respected her pace and space. She felt gratitude for his patience and kindness. She began to trust herself fully, to act without fear of failure, to make decisions with confidence. The land taught her that life moved in cycles. Seasons changed slowly, but surely. Growth came with care and persistence. She mirrored this in her own life. She saw that healing was not a single moment, but a series of small, steady steps, and she had taken them all. She felt ready to face whatever came next, not with fear or hesitation, but with calm awareness and hope. Each day she walked the fields, cared for the animals, worked alongside the cowboy. She lived fully in the present. She realized that belonging was not about finding someone to keep her safe. It was about creating a life where she could be safe with herself, where trust and care were part of daily life, where hope was lived, not just imagined. And for the first time she felt that the future was hers to shape, not dictated by past pain, not feared for past loss, but embraced with steady hands and an open heart. She had learned that life could be gentle and strong, that kindness could be steady, that trust could grow slowly, and that she could finally walk forward on her own terms. The morning was quiet and cool as she stepped outside. The sun was just beginning to rise and paint the sky with gentle colors. She felt the calmness in her chest and noticed the stillness of the land around her. The fields stretched far and free, and the animals moved slowly. Everything seemed to breathe together with her own breath. She walked along the path to the barn, thinking about the days that had passed. Everything felt different now, because her past had disappeared, but because she had learned how to live despite it. She had learned that pain did not have to control her, and that kindness could be real. The cowboy was already working with the animals. He moved carefully and thoughtfully, every gesture steady and deliberate. Noticed her and nodded, but did not rush words. She liked this about him. Silence was not empty, it was a space where she could simply be. She began her daily tasks with a sense of purpose, feeding the animals, cleaning the barn, preparing the tools for work outside. She had learned that each small action mattered and could be done with care. The animals responded to her differently. Now they trusted her and came close. Without fear, she felt a connection that had been missing from her life for so long. She worked steadily beside the cowboy, sometimes speaking softly about the tasks, sometimes just moving together in silence. There was no rush, no pressure, only a shared rhythm. She began to notice the little things he did, the way he treated the animals with patience, the way he noticed the weather, the way he respected the land. She started to understand that living carefully and observing with attention was a form of strength. Afternoons were often spent outside the barn. She walked the fields to check fences, to repair tools, to watch the animals graze. She noticed how the wind moved across the land, how the sun changed the colors of the grass and the sky. She began to see beauty in things she had never paid attention to before. These moments reminded her that life could be gentle and kind if she took time to notice it. Evenings were quiet and reflective. They sat near the fire or on the porch, watching the sky change colors as the sun sank. She felt the weight of old fears lifting slowly with each passing day. Her mind could think about the future without being pulled by the past. She realized that she was capable of hope, and that hope did not have to end in pain. She began to share more of herself with the cowboy, not all at once, but in small, careful ways. She told him fragments of her past, her fears, her small victories. He listened without interruption, without judgment. This taught her that trust could grow slowly and safely, and that people could hold space for her without taking or leaving. She tried new things around the farm, fixing broken tools, cleaning spaces, arranging feed for the animals. Each small success made her feel capable and confident. She realized she could trust herself and her own strength. The land itself became a teacher. She noticed how seasons changed, how growth took time, how care and patience yielded results. She mirrored this in her own life, learning that healing and growth came slowly and steadily. Some days were harder than others. Memories would surface, uninvited fears would return. She did not fight them, but acknowledged them and let them pass. The cowboy never forced conversation or response. He allowed her to process at her own pace and simply offered presence. She began to notice changes in her body and mind. Her steps were lighter, her hands steadier, her heart calmer. She could look forward to each day with a sense of purpose, not excitement that demanded perfection, but quiet contentment that grew from effort and care. Her nights were restful. She slept deeply without fear. Dreams became calm and hopeful. She realized how much her life had changed from the days when sleep brought anxiety and loneliness. She planned small goals for herself, learning how to care for the animals more efficiently, observing and understanding the land better, taking small actions that made a lasting difference. She realized that life could be built one step at a time, and each step mattered. Her relationship with the cowboy evolved naturally. It was built on trust and respect, words of promise, but actions and consistency. She saw that caring could exist without conditions, and that presence alone was enough to build connection. Months passed, and her confidence grew. She could face new challenges without fear. She understood that setbacks were part of life and did not define her. She began to help with larger tasks on the farm. Independently, she felt proud, not for recognition, but for the simple fact that she could handle responsibility. The land taught her that patience and attention brought growth. She mirrored this in herself. Small actions done carefully brought her closer to healing. She learned to appreciate the present instead of worrying about the past or future. She also discovered joy in simple pleasures, watching animals graze, feeling the sun on her face, walking through the fields, noticing how the world moved slowly and gently. She felt grateful for these moments that were once unimaginable. She became more confident in her voice and thoughts. She shared ideas about improving the farm, caring for animals, making life easier and more pleasant. Her input was valued and respected. She realized she had a place in the world where her thoughts mattered. Noticed her fears still lingered sometimes, but they no longer controlled her. She had learned strategies to handle them, to acknowledge them, and then move forward. Then land and the steady presence of the cowboy became anchors for her growth. She found herself thinking about the future with curiosity and cautious hope. She imagined learning new skills, caring for more animals, planting more crops, improving the farm. She began to understand that she could create a life that was meaningful and secure. Days were filled with work and learning and quiet reflection. She felt connected to the world in a way she had never experienced before. The routine and consistency gave her confidence and strength. She realized that healing was not a single moment, but a continuous process. Every task completed, every act of care, every small step of trust was part of this healing sheet. embraced the process, and no longer feared the slow pace. She noticed subtle joys in life, the sound of birds, the movement of clouds, the smell of fresh earth, the warmth of sunlight. She learned to appreciate them fully without rushing or needing more her trust in the cowboy and herself. Grew together, she understood that safety and kindness could coexist with independence and effort. She realized that being cared for did not mean losing her autonomy. She began to share more and more with him thoughts, feelings, questions, dreams, and small plans. He listened and encouraged without pushing. She discovered that trust could grow steadily and safely. She also began to teach herself to respond to challenges. Calmly, she noticed how setbacks no longer triggered panic or despair. She could problem solve and act with confidence. Life became a balance of work, learning, reflection, and quiet connection. She felt herself becoming stronger emotionally and physically. She noticed the small victories in her daily routines. Her nights were filled with peaceful sleep and gentle dreams. She woke refreshed, ready to face another day. The cycle of work, rest, and reflection gave her life structure and stability. She learned that consistency and care created a foundation for hope, not grand events or sudden changes, but steady effort and attention to daily life. She embraced this understanding the farm continued to teach her lessons about patience, about resilience, about connection. She grew in confidence and skill, and her sense of self-depend. She realized she could face life without fear and with steady hope. Over time, she noticed a quiet joy in routine each day. She found new appreciation in simple tasks. Chased tasks completed with care added to her confidence and sense of belonging. She had built a life where she could trust herself and others, where hope and kindness were not fleeting, but lived experiences, where she could face the world with courage and steady steps. She realized that transformation was ongoing healing. It was not a destination, but a journey, and she was walking it fully awake and aware. Every morning brought opportunity for learning and growth. Every afternoon brought moments of reflection and connection. Every evening brought rest and quiet gratitude. She no longer feared the past. She acknowledged it and let it be part of her story without controlling her present. She embraced each moment in each task. She appreciated her own strength and courage. She discovered that life could be kind, that work could be meaningful, connection could be steady, that trust could grow slowly and safely. She understood that she was capable of hope, capable of joy, capable of joy, capable of living fully, and capable of sharing that life with someone who respected and supported her. Her days became a rhythm of care and growth and quiet happiness. The animals, the land, and the cowboy became parts of a life that was steady and rewarding. She felt proud of herself and grateful for the slow unfolding of trust and healing. She realized that the future was hers to shape, not dictated by past pain, not threatened by fear, but built with steady hands and an open heart. And for the first time in a long time, she felt completely alive, connected to the world, to the land, to herself, to the people who cared. She had found a life of steady hope and lasting belonging. The morning was calm, and the sun rose slowly over the fields. She stepped outside and felt the warmth on her face. The air smelled of fresh grass and earth. She took a deep breath and felt a quiet happiness. Barn and the animals were already waiting for her attention. She walked among them, gently feeding and caring. Each movement was careful and deliberate. She noticed how the animals responded to her presence with calm trust. The cowboy was working at the fence far across the field. He waved to her, but did not call. She liked the quiet connection they shared. No rush, no pressure, only steady presence. She began her daily routine with focus and care, cleaning the barn, tending to the animals, checking the fences. Every small task felt important. Every action mattered in its own way. She had learned that care could be a form of love. Without words, she thought about the past, but did not dwell on it. Memories of loneliness and fear surfaced sometimes, but she let them pass like clouds across the sky. She had learned to observe without being pulled under days past. With steady rhythm work, reflection, connection, and quiet learning, she began to notice subtle changes in her self-confidence, growing patience, deepening awareness. She Walked through the fields, observing the animals, noticing their habits, the patterns of movement, the way the wind shifted. She felt connected to life in a way she had never known. The cowboy came over to help repair a section of fence. They worked together side by side, sometimes speaking softly about the land, the animals, and the work, sometimes moving in, companionable. Silent, she felt a quiet satisfaction in the rhythm of the task completed, added to a sense of belonging and purpose. She realized she was capable of steady effort. Without fear, she tried new things, repairing tools, planting small sections of crops. Observing the land, each attempt brought learning and confidence. She felt capable of creating a life with meaning and structure. Evenings were times for reflection and quiet conversation. She sometimes spoke of her dreams and thoughts. The cowboy listened without judgment, without interruption. She learned that trust could be steady and consistent. She noticed small joys everywhere. Sound of birds, the movement of clouds, the smell of earth, the warmth of the sun. She appreciated these details fully. They reminded her that life could be gentle and full of small happiness. She began planning longer-term goals: how to care for the animals better, how to improve the farm, how to learn new skills. Each goal was practical and achievable, each day built on the last. Her relationship with the cowboy remained consistent and supportive. He offered guidance without pressure. He allowed her to find her own pace. She realized that steady presence could teach as much as words. Some days brought challenges. Weather would change, work would be harder, tasks more difficult. She faced each challenge calmly, using the skills and patience she had developed. Discovered she could handle difficulty without panic or fear. The land itself was a teacher. Seasons changed slowly. The work required persistence. The animals demanded care. She mirrored this in her own life, learning that patience and attention brought growth. She began to trust herself more. Fully, decision-making became easier. Confidence grew steady and quiet. She realized she could manage both work and life. With careful attention, she took joy in teaching herself new skills: repairing fences, constructing shelters, observing wildlife, caring for plants. Each success built her confidence and sense of belonging. Nights became restful and dreams calmed. She no longer woke with fear or anxiety. Sleep was a gift she accepted with gratitude. She realized that healing was an ongoing process. Every day offered opportunities to strengthen trust, confidence, and hope. She embraced each day as a step in her journey. The cowboy remained a steady companion. He did not control her path. He simply offered presence and guidance. She discovered that connection could be gentle and reliable. She noticed her own emotional growth. She could face memories of the past without being consumed by them. She could act with patience and care. She could create small victories. Every day the land rewarded steady effort. Fields flourished, animals thrived, structures held strong. She understood that consistent care brought stability in life. She began to see herself as capable and strong, no longer defined by fear or abandonment. She could build a life with purpose and meaning. She discovered joy in routine, completing tasks carefully and observing life in the fields and connecting with the cowboy and animals in quiet, steady ways. Months passed, and her confidence and skills grew. She could manage complex tasks on the farm independently. She felt proud, not for praise, but for the ability to live fully and competently. She also learned to respond to setbacks calmly. Problems were solved with care and thoughtfulness. Mistakes were accepted. As part of learning, life became a balance of work, learning, reflection, and connection. She felt deeply rooted and capable. She realized she could face the world with strength and hope. She noticed beauty in everyday moments: the colors of the sunrise, the patterns of animals, the rhythm of the wind. She appreciated life fully, without fear or longing. She reflected on her journey from loneliness and fear to trust and steady confidence. She realized that change was possible with effort, patience, and care. Trust in the cowboy and herself remained strong. She understood that presence and kindness were more powerful than words. She shared thoughts, feelings, and plans freely. She discovered that steady connection built strong relationships she no longer feared. Openness, she planned and achieved small goals each day, learning new skills, improving the farm, caring for animals. Each step brought growth and stability. She noticed herself growing emotionally, physically, and mentally. her confidence was quiet and steadier. Heart was open, but careful she could navigate life without fear. She felt joy in small accomplishments. Chas completed, each problem solved. Each problem solved. Animal cared, for she felt proud of her life. In her choices she realized that she had created a life of steady hope, where trust, patience, and care guided her actions, where she could belong fully and safely. She could face challenges without fear. She could respond to setbacks calmly. She could create a life with meaning and stability. Every day was a step forward, every task an opportunity to strengthen herself and her life, every quiet moment a chance to observe and appreciate. She understood that life could be gentle and strong, that kindness could be steady, that trust could grow slowly and safely. She had learned to live fully, to face the world with calm and confidence, to create a life of meaning and connection. She felt completely present in each moment, aware of her past, but not controlled by it, excited for the future without fear, and ready to walk her path with courage.